Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and today is Beltane in the Northern Hemisphere. Happy Beltane! It is a beautiful day outside, and I've been inside most of the day working on things and editing videos. This is another instance of that, but look at this natural lighting. It's fantastic. I hope you're all having a wonderful Sabbath, whether it is Beltane or Samhain if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. My favorite. And both very awesome times of year where I really feel like we're just rooted in the middle of the season that we're currently in. Beltane is the approximate time in the northeastern United States when I really feel like it's spring and it's finally warm most of the time. It might snow again. I hope not. But anyway, yeah, so I hope you're having a fantastic day, first of all. I can't wait to go outside after I get all this work done and collect twigs and stuff to use in my Beltane altar later. Yay. So, this week we are talking about deities. The topic comes from Amber Lynn, who I believe is one of my Patreon sponsors, so shout out and thank you. The question is based on the fact that recently Amber has felt called to work with Hestia again, who is a Greek goddess of the hearth and of the home. And their topic / question is essentially, they feel that Hestia is a somewhat lesser known deity, and so they want to know who our favorite lesser known deities are. So I have to say, this threw me for a loop when I thought about it, because I didn't know that Hestia was considered a lesser known deity. So I feel like I don't have a good frame of reference for this. I feel like it's definitely different if a certain deity, no matter how well known they might be in mainstream culture, if a certain deity is like your deity that has chosen you or that you've chosen to work with or worship, whatever your relationship with them is, whatever that connection is for you, if you're the one, you know, maybe you're looking for more information about this deity. Maybe you're trying to connect with more people who worship this deity more than others, or that work with this deity more closely than others like you do. Then I feel like you have a better idea of whether or not there are more people out there who have a similar connection to that deity as you. And I don't have that knowledge and insight about this topic, because my first thought, something is on my glasses and it's bothering me. My first thought was, like, I didn't know that Hestia would be considered a lesser known deity because she's part of essentially the main family that makes up the Greek pantheon. And the Greek pantheon, I feel like, in the United States, is one of the most well-known pantheons of gods. Whether people think they're real or not, you know, they think it's just mythology, or if they think it's truly history, or, you know, whatever it is. High schools in the United States, at least when I was in high school, teach Greek mythology. So I feel like any of the main family members of the Greek pantheon are fairly well known. I don't know what that's like outside this country, and yeah, you know, I don't know how it really all applies. So that was just my first thought. So I don't know if Amber is really referring more to less popular as far as pagans working directly with Hestia, or if we're talking about in general just feeling like people don't know her as much. And so I really had to step back and think, like, is this just me? Do I have what's the word I'm looking for? Do I have a mistaken sense of thinking that people know? You know, am I taking it for granted that people know about all these main members of the Greek pantheon, for example, and their counterparts in the Roman pantheon? That could be just me. There could be plenty of people out there who have no idea. So that was a moment for me. And by a moment, I mean a series of moments since we got this topic, me thinking about this. So, to begin with, I don't feel like I know about a lot of deities that are really lesser known. Like, I have this perception that if I know about them, they're pretty well known, you know? And, like, I have friends who are more heavily into the Egyptian pantheon, for example, and they could tell you about all the Egyptian deities that I've never heard of. And so I have this general idea that if I've heard of them, they're a pretty well-known mainstream one. But I could be totally wrong about that. So what I have here is this really exciting blue spiral notebook that I started using years ago for studying deity and just like keeping notes about deity. So anytime I would get like a book that talked about pagan pantheons of deity, I would just like write down notes. So like the first page is a list of titans that Zeus did not banish. All right, starting right there. I feel like those are lesser known. I feel like I would say those are lesser known. So if anyone's working with titans that Zeus did not banish, I feel like those are lesser known, for sure. But then I went on Wikipedia, okay? Apparently, this was in 2013, according to my notebook. I went on Wikipedia and I looked up pantheons of deities, and I just made myself a list. Because basically at the time, I was looking for, like, what pantheons have I heard of and what pantheons have I not heard of. I apologize in advance if I'm mispronouncing any of these, but this was directly from the Wikipedia, like, list. You know how in the sidebar, you get, like, this is part of a series on religion or whatever, and it'll link other things? I think it was something like that, because I wrote from Wikipedia on the left. So I feel like it was on the left-hand side. This was in 2013, so it may have been updated since then. But I have pantheons of deities. African, Armenian, American, Abrahamic, such as the saints in Catholicism, Aztec, Berber from North Africa, Canaanite, Celtic, Chinese, Divine Council, Egyptian, Greek, I don't know how to pronounce that, but it says Aboriginal Berber inhabitants of the Canary Islands, Hindu, Incan, Japanese, Shinto, Buddhism, and Taoism, and then Japanese Buddhist, specifically, Mayan, Native American, Norse, Rigvedic, which is deities in Hindu Rigveda, pronunciation, I apologize, Roman, Slavic, Sumerian, Old Babylonian, and Babylonian. And then I remembered in college, one of my friends introduced me to a website called godchecker.com. I haven't looked for it in a while, so I don't know if it still exists, but it's a very tongue-in-cheek informational website about the gods. And it's real information, it's serious information, but it doesn't take itself seriously. If it still exists and you go, you'll see. So I wrote a list on the next page. Godchecker.com adds these pantheons in addition to the ones that were already listed on Wikipedia. There was Australian, Baltic, Caribbean, Finnish, Indian, Mesopotamian, Middle Eastern, Oceanic, South American, Southeast Asian, Tibetan, and the Christian saints were listed as a separate thing. And then I wrote down the ones that I feel at the time, again, this was 2013, the things that I thought were the most common or most well-known pantheons as far as neo-pagan paths go. And I said that it was African, as far as Santeria and Vodun, Celtic, Chinese, Egyptian, Greek, Hindu, Japanese, Buddhist, Native American, Norse, and Roman. And then kind of like honorable mention, I put Etruscan, which is the Italian pantheon, because over my years of practice, I've heard people talk about Etruscan deities, but I would say, and I put a check mark next to the like major ones. So a lot of those were like, I've heard people throughout the time I've been on YouTube and everything, I've heard people talk about these paths. So I feel like there's a general awareness of them, like the Hindu pantheon and the Buddhist and Native American, things like that, Chinese. But then I put a check mark next to African, Celtic, Egyptian, Greek, Norse, and Roman. So I feel like those are the biggest ones. My next page is just a list of the Greek deities and their basic things that they rule. The thing, for example, or like basic things about them. So Zeus, king, sky, thunder, eagle, oak, scepter, scales. Roman equivalent, Jupiter. Stuff like that. And then, so I wrote, like, these are the 12 Olympians, other Olympians beyond the main 12, which apparently sometimes people consider Dionysus one of the main 12, and they bump Hestia down into other Olympians, but other people consider Hestia one of the main 12 and Dionysus one of the others. So Hestia definitely is up for debate with some people, depending on the mythology that you read, I guess, whether you consider her one of the 12 main Olympians. And so, yeah, so I was like, Hestia is lesser known. So Hestia, for those who don't know, this is not going to be a video about Hestia, but what I have written here in my notes is hearth, domesticity, most generous and gentle, and her Roman equivalent is Vesta. So, yeah. If I were to look through, okay, and then I have a page of Celtic and Norse, again, like basic deities and basic things about them. And the Celtic includes British, Irish, and Gallic, and a little bit about Welsh, African deities in Santeria, African deities in Vodun. Again, this was like all based on Wikipedia and godchecker.com and stuff like that. And then I have one of the Egyptian. But yeah, so without being one of the people who, for example, really works with the Kemetic pantheon or Kemeticism, the Egyptian pantheon, I wouldn't be able to look at my list of Egyptian deities and tell you which ones are better known, because that's just not my area. So I feel like I would do a poor job at telling you, like, oh yeah, these ones are better known and these ones are lesser known. I feel like Zeus and Hera and Poseidon and Demeter, Apollo, Athena, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hermes, I feel like those are all pretty well known. Looking at the list of Greeks, I would say maybe Hephaestus is not as well known, but I don't know. I could not tell you. So I was trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about in this video, and then I was like, let me just get out my notebook and talk about it, because this is my thought process, right? This is me trying to think, like, who are my favorite lesser known deities? That starts with thinking, who are my favorite deities that I feel like other people don't know? You know? That means something totally different to me. Like, for example, Athena is one of my favorites. Athena, Minerva in the Roman pantheon. And not necessarily because they're from those pantheons, but that, well, I do have specific connections with Athena and Minerva of those specific cultures. This is really hard to describe, oh my gosh. It's always hard for me to explain the connection that I have with different deities. But anyway, there are reasons that the stuff that you learn about Athena as a Greek goddess when you look her up and research her, there are some facts about her that cause me to feel a connection. We'll say it that way. And then Minerva, the Roman equivalent, I started to have a little bit more of a personal connection with that face of the deity, that culture's interpretation of the deity, when I visited Bath in England years ago, and we went to the Roman baths, and they had all this, information about Minerva. There was old carvings and statues, like pieces of the original Roman baths that were dedicated to Minerva, and they have this section where they talk about the water filtration system and how it's still naturally heated and all kinds of stuff like this. And there's a little spot where you can get a little disposable cup and you can get some of the water that's like being filtered through, and it comes out and you can drink it. It's safe to drink and it's really warm. And I remember my friend didn't want to drink it because she was like, no, I don't want to drink warm water. Like, you drink tea, whatever. So I actually love just drinking hot water now. I never used to. I just had never done it before. But anyway, so after I went to Bath and walked through the Roman baths and drank that warm water dedicated to Minerva and all this stuff, I had more of a personal connection with the Roman Minerva in addition to the Greek Athena. So, but I feel like those are deities that people know, right? Like, I have no conceit that she's an obscure goddess that, like, nobody knows about this, you know? So I don't know. I don't know who I would say my favorites are that are less well known. Well, I just saw Morpheus, god of dreams. So if you count anyone from Sandman, and I know now we're kind of getting into more archetypes and not necessarily cultural pantheons, but pop cultural, which I know not everyone agrees with. But, you know, things that are based on those, like Dream from the Sandman graphic novel series by Neil Gaiman is based on Morpheus. And Destiny and Desire and all those things. They have connections to deities from different cultures. Just looking at my lists here, trying to figure out, is there anyone that I really at a glance feel like, oh, I love this deity, and I feel like people don't know enough about them. But it's really, I really feel like my study of various different pantheons of deities and specific deities, that was never really a thing that I was concerned with in the early part of my practice. I wasn't as concerned about trying to pick deities to worship or work with or gain connections with. That is something that came much later in my practice. So yeah. However, there is one, oh, speaking of Athena, I do some work with Medusa now, and Medusa is not necessarily considered a deity, but is a figure from Greek mythology that I feel like, not that she's less known, because like people in the general culture here, at least, know of Medusa. They might not know a lot about her and a lot about the specific myths and the alternate versions of stories about her and things like that, but they know of her. You've heard her name, you know, like, no, I don't know her personally, but I know of her. One of those kind of things. So I don't consider her lesser known, but maybe less likely to be worked with in a pagan framework. Hecate, Dionysus, all of these. Okay, so here's one that I learned about. If you recall, the Wikipedia list that I said a little while ago mentioned American deities, separate from Native American. What the heck does that mean? Well, there's one in specific, and so I made a whole page of notes about her because I just thought this was so interesting. This is not a deity that I have sought out a personal connection with, that I have worked with, or that I worship. But I do think she's really cool to know about in a historical construct, in a historical framework. I guess I just like the word framework today. And that is Columbia, the American goddess of America, or like goddess of liberty. And when we say America, in America, we mean the United States of America. This always bothers me. I don't know why we call ourselves Americans when that's the name of two whole continents, right? We have North America and South America. Canadians are North Americans. Everybody who lives in South America is a Southern American or South American. Yeah, not Southern American. If you say Southern American, people think you mean the South of the United States of America. It's very confusing terminology. So what this means is Columbia was a goddess within the United States of America. She was the goddess of liberty. So here's what I found out about her. And this, I think this was from Wikipedia. So, she was the personification of the United States of America. Her name was derived from Columbus. Christopher Columbus, whatever. She was first used in 1738 as a fictitious name in a British magazine because at the time publishing parliamentary debates was illegal. So instead of talking about the United States of America, Italy, Germany, all these, they had fictitious names of characterizations that they gave to the countries. And so that's where Colombia came from initially, and it was later adopted by the United States of America. It was the inspiration for the name of the district, She was the inspiration for the name of the District of Columbia, Columbia University. The song, Hail Columbia, which used to be the unofficial anthem, I didn't know that, and which is used now as the entrance march for the vice president, and many other things. Columbia Pictures is named for Columbia, all of these things, right? Space shuttle, lots of towns and cities in the United States. She was displaced as the female symbol of the United States by Lady Liberty about 1920. And both were goddesses having to do with liberty and justice. So it's just like her personification became taken over by Lady Liberty when the Statue of Liberty became a thing because they were so similar. Comparable to the British Britannia, the Italian Italia Turrita, and the French Marianne. So I guess those were all different female characterizations of the spirit of those countries. So she's comparable to those. Referenced in poetry from 1776 through the Revolutionary War, in paintings, in political cartoons, and in statues. One of the statues on the Capitol building shares her characteristics. She inspired, or her image inspired and was used in the women's suffrage movement. And I wrote the date 1913, whereas Uncle Sam's image became fixed in 1916. So then Uncle Sam took over from our good goddess Columbia. Ain't that the way? Okay, and then I wrote a whole bunch of other things about her. So powers and attributes associated with Columbia are liberty, freedom, but also war, agriculture and abundance, hope, prosperity, striving to reach ideals, honor, perseverance, strength in battle, civic duty. Right? Are you getting the idea here? So, similar to Uncle Sam, Columbia was used to instill some ideals in the people of the United States, especially through the Revolutionary War. So, like, things that you wanted people to keep in mind, things that you wanted people to exhibit, pay attention to, the way that you wanted people to think during wartime. Columbia handled all that. She was like, it'll be okay, and we're such a great place, but also don't be afraid to fight for what's right, you know, all this stuff. Protection of soldiers, women's rights, overcoming tyranny, care for the poor, community, fair trade and commerce, human rights, religious freedom, protecting the land. So, there's some things in there that... Hello? Can you hear that siren? Now that it's getting warmer outside, it's constantly noisy here throughout the day. The siren's getting closer. It's going to keep making noise. Looking. Okay. There they go. They passed by. It was a fire and rescue. So, I always like to take a second and send a bit of energy, especially if I've just made a comment about, like, hearing a noise in a video, because I lose myself for a second. And I want to be like, excuse me, I'm recording a video, but, like, no, what you're doing is actually very important, and thank you. So, symbols of Columbia include the Liberty cap and pole, shield, eagle feathers, bald eagle, a sword, a bow and arrow, a torch, a war helmet, a sun ray crown, which I can't help but think sounds a lot like Lady Liberty's spiked crown, 5-pointed stars, and broken chains. Breaking the chains of oppression. Can we have her back, please? Maybe I should start working with this goddess, you guys. In addition to Athena, justice, all of that. Animals associated with Columbia are the eagle, probably specifically the bald eagle, but it just said the eagle, the rattlesnake, and the dove. Plants include olive, nod to Athena, the olive, the laurel, pear, and the apple. Colors, red, blue, white, gold, and purple. Celestial bodies associated with Columbia were Venus and the Sun, and the zodiac sign associated with her is Virgo. And I wrote down comparable to Athena. So that is a lesser-known deity that I truly feel is lesser known, that I know about. But she is not someone that I have seriously sought a relationship with or worked with in any way. But she is related to Athena, one of the deities that I do work with quite a bit. But also, I was talking to someone about this a while ago, I feel a little bit like sometimes I focus more on the specific deities, like it'll be Athena specifically, or Minerva specifically, or Columbia specifically, for the entire picture of who that deity is. And then other times, I'll be more focusing on the thing that they represent. So other times, I'll be focused more on justice. And in connecting with that energy and that goal, naturally, the deities associated with that will come into play. But it's more focused on the thing itself. So my practice really goes back and forth because I am very into symbolism and what people and places and events and things, the symbolism and associations that go with them. So sometimes it's more deity-based and sometimes it's more the thing itself, whatever the energy is, whether it's love. So sometimes it'll be, you know, Aphrodite, Greek goddess, and Venus, Roman goddess, and other times it'll be love, the idea and the concept and the energy, capital L, love. And sometimes it'll be desire from the Sandman universe, you know. So yeah. Also, I don't know, again, I don't really consider her lesser known, but the star goddess as the version of the goddess talked about in Reclaiming tradition of witchcraft. There's the Charge of the Star Goddess is a poem that has a few different versions. Starhawk has a specific version that is published in her books and that is largely used in Reclaiming. And I felt like it was worth mentioning her here because outside of if you've read Starhawk's books, you might not know about the epithet or the name, the star goddess specifically. I don't know. But this was a really fun video and it's a great thing to think about, and I hope that everyone else this week has some really cool, interesting deities to tell us about that maybe we don't know about. But yeah, I just don't feel qualified to say with certainty, yeah, this deity is not very well known. This deity is really well known, because I might think that they are and maybe they're not. Maybe it really depends on, you know, what you're talking about. Are we talking about, does the world in general, have they heard their name? Or are we talking about, do pagans actively work with them in pagan practice? Because I feel like that's definitely a different thing, for sure. But, Columbia. Yeah, Columbia. United States Goddess of Liberty. Pre-Uncle Sam. Pre-Lady Liberty. I think she's pretty lesser known. Thanks for watching. I will see you next week. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and tell us about deities in the comments, and goodbye.